With the release of Pikmin 4 still being pretty recent, I thought I'd return to a series of mine where I compare two different Pikmin areas to see which one is better, in my opinion of course. And since I've already compared a winter, spring, and autumn area, I thought I'd compare two summer areas this time. And what goes with summer? That's right, water. So I'm going to compare the two most water-based areas in the game, which are the Serene Shores from Pikmin 4 and the Distant Spring from Pikmin 1 in 5 different categories, which are the environments, the music, the enemies and wildlife, the puzzles and gameplay, and finally the story and reason as to why you were there in the first place, in order to find out which of the two areas is the best summer/water area in Pikmin. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. The first section I'm going to compare the two areas in is their environments, and just from a first glance, obviously the Serene Shores is stunningly beautiful, and is full of amazing landmarks such as the giant sandcastle and the coral reef. Plus the water in Pikmin 4 is so well done and looks like it'd be as crisp as glacier water from Iceland. And then we look over at the Distant Spring, and yeah, it's not exactly the best looking. Since it was from Pikmin 1, there wasn't exactly anything to improve upon, so it's still a good looking area, especially in Pikmin 1, but compared to every other area from later games, it isn't nearly as graphically good looking. And if we're going just based off of looks, then obviously the Serene Shores would win. But it's not just looks that make an environment, it's what you feel while exploring there as well, and the Distant Spring excels at this. It really makes it feel like you're alone on an uncharted planet, and you have to be the one to save yourself. And the Distant Spring does this better than most areas in Pikmin 1, and I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so eerie there, with the fog and the grassy beach feel. Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. But even with this, the Serene Shores is just so beautiful, and is such a fun time to explore. Plus it has the really cool mechanic where the tide will change halfway through the day, which helps make it feel more alive and real. So it would probably be a crime if the Serene Shores didn't win the Environment Award. Now for the music in the areas. Surprisingly, this one is harder than I expected it to be, because in Pikmin 4, most of the areas don't have the best music, except for Giant's Hearth. That music is absolutely amazing. And the Serene Shores is no exception. Most of the area's music in Pikmin 4 is more just atmospheric sounds and such, unlike previous Pikmin games where it's a whole song by itself. So I thought for sure Distant Spring would easily beat the Serene Shores. But then I realized that the Distant Spring's music is just like the music in Pikmin 4, where it's more just atmospheric noise. They both sound great in the areas, but listening to the music outside of them feels almost incomplete in a way. Even with this though, one has to be better, and I'd say that the Distant Spring does a better job at complementing the area. Like I said with the sound design in the environment section, the music makes the Distant Spring that much better. It makes it sound both pleasant to be in, while also sounding dangerous and eerie. And the Serene Shores music just makes it sound like you're on a sunny beach. Which, I mean, you are on a sunny beach, but it just doesn't complement the area as well as the Distant Spring. So the music award goes to the Distant Spring. Next up is the wildlife. Now, both of these areas are a little later into the game, so the enemies are a little tougher than what you'd find in most areas. Of course, every area has strong enemies, there are just more of them in these areas, especially the Distant Spring. Everywhere you go, it feels like you're running into giant tanky enemies like puffy blowhogs, wollywogs, and bullbears. Especially bullbears. I swear, there are bullbears all over the place here. Luckily, bullbears sleep in Pikmin 1 unlike in the other games, so they don't pose that much of a threat until they're woken up. The Distant Spring is also the only area in Pikmin 1 that progressively adds more enemies the longer the game goes on. Not including the Mamuta and the Gulix at the impact site, because those guys are a little different. After day 15 in the Distant Spring, puffy blowhogs and dwarf bullbears will appear on the map more and make the area a bit more difficult. Then moving over to the Serene Shores, the enemies here are less difficult than the Distant Spring, but there is a lot more variety. Since Pikmin 4 is the most recent addition to the series, there's been a lot of time to add lots of different enemies. And as a result of that, there are enemies like the peckish aristocrab, crusted rumpump, whip-tongue bullborb, pearly clamp, and so much more. But there is just one problem with the enemies here. And the problem extends to all of Pikmin 4, and that is once an enemy is dead, the enemy will never respawn again. This makes every area in Pikmin 4 so much more empty and dead, because now once you kill them, they're not coming back. So now all those diverse enemies in the area are gone after like 2 days, and there's no more wildlife. And it doesn't help that because of Ochi, every enemy dies faster than you can say Pikmin. So even if the Distant Spring doesn't have diverse enemies, it's got enemies that at least come back. And just to put it even more past the Serene Shores, the Distant Spring also has a secret boss called the Smoky Prog that has to be one of the coolest and most unique enemies in the series. So if it wasn't clear already, the Distant Spring wins the Wildlife Award. Now for the puzzles. Now when I think of the Serene Shores, I don't really remember there being any puzzles. Most of the puzzles in the game were in the caves, and for the purposes of this video, I'm counting the caves as separate from the areas they're in. There is one cave though that I will count for this area, but not because of what's inside it, but actually what happens when you complete it. Once you get out of the engulfed castle cave, it spits you out on top of a cliff, which is required in order to get all the treasures in the game, and that is the only way to get up to it. I wouldn't really count this as a puzzle though, more like a surprise, like, oh, I guess this is how I was supposed to get up here. But I don't really know what else here could be considered a puzzle, so that cave is the most puzzle-oriented thing here. While in the Distant Spring, there are plenty more puzzles. There's a spot where you have to throw the Pikmin up onto a wall, and then swarm them against the wall so they reach the ship part and not fall off. There's another part where you have to throw blue Pikmin up onto a platform, and then throw said blue Pikmin into a yellow candy pop bud to make them yellow Pikmin, and then throw those yellow Pikmin onto the shore of a small bit of land, because there's a ship part up on the wall there that only yellow Pikmin can reach. So you have to get the yellow Pikmin over there, and then bring the ship part down, and then after that you have to transform the yellows back into blues to be able to carry the ship part through the water and back to your ship. This puzzle in particular that I just described is one of the most unique and fun puzzles in the game, or maybe even the series for me. But after that, there aren't really any other big puzzles that stand out. But at least the Distant Spring has puzzles, because that's more than the Serene Shores can say, so the Distant Spring wins the puzzle award. Now for the final section, which is the story of the areas. This one is going to be a bit different than the other area rankings I've done, because in every area in Pikmin 1, it basically is the same story, which is to just gather ship parts to get Olimar off the planet. And it's the same for Pikmin 4, except it's to find castaways and track down Olimar. Personally, I find that the story of Pikmin 4 is more compelling, because being sent as a rescue officer to save people who have crashed or gotten lost on a planet is a pretty cool concept for a game, let alone a Pikmin game. And then there's also the other part of the story, which is to find Olimar, who you find out is a leafling and you have to save him. But you don't really know this until you get to Hero's Hideaway, or if you realize Moss is with him and you put 2 and 2 together. And then in the Distant Spring, the story is that Olimar is shipwrecked and that he has to get his ship parts. That's really it, and while I find Pikmin 1 to be really fun, the story is just so incredibly straightforward and only really serves as a reason to play the game, and not much more. So I'll be giving the Serene Shores the Story Award. And that wraps up the rankings, so let's tally up the results, and we'll see that the Distant Spring wins with 3 awards. While the Serene Shores has a very beautiful landscape and a better story, I'd say, the Distant Spring just has more to do and is way more fun to explore. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. But for now, I've been AKB Rhino, and I'll see you in the next one.